Hello, Dougal here, and in this video I'll be presenting some suggestions for the colored lights, silent running mode, and a battle stations mode. Some of these ideas are my own, others are based on requests I frequently see within the community. We'll start off with the blue light, but first a quick disclaimer, because I know if I don't bring it up, somebody else might. Blue lights on U-boats is not historically accurate. They did use blue lights in the Navy for about 40 years because they believed it relieved eye strain on computer screens, so it was a thing, just not during World War II. Now with that out of the way, I get the feeling the devs already know this, but put it in the game anyway as a nice little reference to the movie Das Boot, in which the blue light was such an iconic part of the film. So I don't have an issue with the blue light itself. U-Boat is a game after all, and I'm fine with realism taking a back seat sometimes in favor of a narrative experience, this being one of those times. That being said though, I think we could stand to make it look a little better. If you notice these screenshots taken from the movie, you'll see they had a mix of blue and white lights. That makes more sense to me, because if the blue light is intended to signify silent running, then the crew only needs 1 or 2 blue bulbs per compartment to get the message across. What they get instead is a music video by Eiffel 65, making the interior of the boat very blue and very dark. Here's some examples I made based on scenes from the movie Das Boot. Just enough blue light to set the mood, while still having enough normal lighting to see what you're doing. I think it looks better this way, and is a little softer on the eyes, especially for those that like to play in first-person perspective, as I do. Now to talk about the red light.
Kurz vor Mitternacht. Die erste seemännische Wache macht sich klar. Damit ihre Augen sich an die Dunkelheit draußen gewöhnen, ist in der Zentrale Rotlicht geschaltet.
Vorsicht! Seilzug, verdammt nochmal! Kaffee am Arsch hier.
Unruhige Zeiten, ne?
Ich mach das Halstuch gleichzeitig.
Steig schnell.
Bei 30 Meter runterhorchen.
Beide Mitte. Hinten, unten rein. Boot ist auf 30 Meter.
The first thing I wanted to point out is that I noticed the watch crew's vision improves when the red light is turned on, even though they're already standing outside in the dark, and worsens if it's turned off. When submerged, this makes sense because the periscope operator needs the red light to maintain his night vision whenever he wanted to look through the scope. But the watch crew, as you saw in the clip, only use the red light to adjust their eyes before going topside. A small detail, and I don't mean to nitpick, but I'll come back to this later in the video. The second thing I wanted to mention is that they did not have red lights inside every compartment of the U-boat. The guys inside the torpedo room or the engine room didn't need night vision, and they don't need to use the periscope. Historically, only the control room and conning tower had red lights in them. I think it looks much cooler this way, and it's historically correct. Okay, so now I want to touch on some ideas about automating the lighting system. See, personally, I really want that extra sight range bonus at night, but I don't want to exit time compression twice a day to switch the lights at dusk and dawn. I even got into the habit of leaving the red light on all the time, just taking the hit to discipline so I don't have to deal with switching the lights anymore. You may not have expected your players to be so dedicated to getting that red light bonus, but that's exactly what I do. It just doesn't feel right sailing through the night without that extra sight bonus, especially in areas where I know contact is imminent. So, I think it would be nice if the crew switched the lights automatically to red every night at dusk, and then back to white again at dawn. And as I pointed out earlier, it's not like the watch crew needs the red light to keep their night vision when surfaced anyway. So the suggestion more or less changes the red light to a cosmetic feature rather than a gameplay mechanic that the player has to manage themselves. I know it's not what you originally had in mind with the 3-color system, but I think this small change would go a long way towards improving the player's quality of life while still staying true to the original idea of resource management. The sight range will still shrink a little at night because of the dark. But now the player is free to focus on other things to keep their sight range bonus at its maximum, like making sure they have an officer on watch, making sure that officer has enough energy, and finally whether or not to use the searchlight. Circling back to talk about the blue light again, I had some ideas for silent running mode. As it is now, when you want to run silent, you have to pause the game and run down a mental checklist. Did I remember to switch the depth steers to manual mode? Did I remember to turn off the gyro compass? And did I remember to stop my engineers from automatically loading and warming torpedoes?
Kapitän?
And finally, switching on the blue light to stop your crew from making noise. All of that can be hard to remember sometimes, if not a little tedious, so I propose binding all of those actions to a single button. One button somewhere on the user interface that, when activated, automatically orders the crew to begin switching off everything that generates noise, switching to blue lights and disabling the automatic loading and warming of torpedoes unless manually ordered to do so through the tab menu. Pressing the button again would order the crew to start turning everything back on. You could make this run silent mode predefined or programmable by the player themselves, kind of like you have with the crew management system, letting the player decide what they want to happen when switching to silent running. And with these suggestions making the red light automatic and the blue light part of the silent running mode, I don't see why we can't have both lights running at the same time. I even made some examples. Silent running being activated during the day, and silent running being activated at night. I like it a lot. I think it gives the boat a lot more character than just solid blue or solid red, and now it really resembles the movie because they always had a mix of lights running at any given time, especially during the action scenes. Now on to the final topic. One of the most requested features on the forum is a manual alarm mode. I agree, but probably not for the same reasons. For instance, I do not think the player should dictate when their crew starts to panic. I kind of like the discipline system as it is, and would only make a few minor suggestions and changes. It doesn't quite make sense to me that morale would start to drop when I'm chasing down a pair of unarmed and unescorted merchants. I should think the crew would be excited about the prospect of an easy target. I also don't think morale should drop as quickly if I'm undetected. If I'm just shadowing a convoy, cruising along and collecting data while calculating my firing solutions. A tense situation to be sure. But the fun hasn't even started yet, and the crew's discipline is dropping at the same rate as if we're being depth charged. So I think there should be different levels of discipline failure, depending on your detection status and whether or not you're being actively hunted. I had another idea to enhance endgame playability for those that have boats full of stoic seawolves. Change the way discipline works so that it has some additional negative effect other than just deciding which sailor is chosen for his personality check. You could tie discipline to oxygen consumption, for example. The lower the discipline, the faster oxygen drops. Some of the more hardcore subsimmers might not like that, as real U-boats could stay submerged for over 48 hours. But I digress. I have never had to use the potassium absorbers in a combat situation. The way I play the game, at least, managing oxygen was never a concern. The way I figure it, cowards and the weak-hearted would burn up oxygen faster the lower discipline is. Less so for stoic seawolves. But this way, discipline will still be a resource the player will need to keep track of long into their career. Otherwise, discipline is utterly superfluous when you have nothing but seawolves on board. Getting back on track though, as I said, I agree. I would love a manual alarm mode, but make it separate from the discipline system. Just like the silent running button, have a button on the user interface marked alarm, that when pressed, the first thing it does is disable crew and officer schedules so that all hands are on deck. No more officers or sailors going to sleep in the heat of battle. And the second thing it does is have the crew secure all compartments, close every bulkhead door. Similar in function to evacuating, but the crew will stay at their stations and will always seal doors behind them if they move compartments. Well, that's it for my ideas. Deepwater, if you're watching this, even if none of these suggestions hold water, thank you for watching regardless, and thank you for a wonderful game.